Survivors left without food and water after the end of the world and the zombie apocalypse. Hello all. This is Jacobson and this is a brief retelling of the 9th and 10th episodes of the 5th season of the zombie series The Walking Dead. You can see the previous episodes at the links in the video description. As soon as this video gets 200 likes, I will release the next part. Enjoy watching it.
17 days have passed since Beth's death. Maggie and others are still coping with Beth's unexpected death. After leaving the hospital, Rick, Glenn, Daryl, Tyrese and Sasha go to get supplies. Rick checks the truck and takes it for a trip to Virginia. Places of significance to Tyrese flash by several times: a small house referring to a hut in a grove, a prison and Woodbury. Several photos of Noah and his twin brothers are also shown. When night falls, Bud also tells Rick to have to go with him from the hospital to accompany him to the community where his family lives. Rick asks where it is. The other one tells him it's not far from Richmond, Virginia. Even though it's far away, Rick decides to tell the rest of the group that the place Noah mentioned will be their next destination. This place was guarded when it left it, surrounded by a wall, and was home to 20 people. It's a long journey, but if everything works out, then it's the last one we have to make, says Rick. Glenn asks, what if he's gone? Rick says that they will continue on their way, but then Michonne compliments him, who says, then we will find a new place. Rick, Michonne, Glenn, Tyrese, Otho go to where Noah lived. Rick radioed Carol to tell her they were almost there. Carol tells Rick that if they don't come back, the others will come looking. But Tyrese also talks about their families. Tyrese mentions her father and Sasha, and it says that it hopes to see its own in the community, and Tyrese replies that he hopes so too. They park about 2 miles out of town near a bullet-riddled station wagon that crashed into a covered pickup truck. They cautiously drive up to Sherwood States. Rick is afraid of snipers, but Bud calms him down. When the gate comes into view, Bud also rushes to them and tries to open them, but they are locked. They hear some sounds from inside, and Glenn climbs the wall to look inside, but they see that the settlement has been destroyed. But he also panics and climbs over the wall to see the destruction. But he breaks down in tears, and Rick and the others follow him. Tyrese comforts him, saying that everything will be fine, that he is with them now. Rick intervenes and tells Noah that he is truly sorry for what happened. Rick radioed Carol and informed her that the place had disappeared. Rick, Michonne and Glenn go to see what they can find. Rick and Glenn discuss the events at the hospital and their shared desire to kill Dawn, despite the random nature of Beth's death. Glenn confesses to Rick that, given everything they've been through, if he had the chance to do it all over again, he wouldn't stop to try to save a man locked in a storage container in Terminus and would kill Dawn without hesitation. Meanwhile, Noah is still grieving, and Iris stays with him and tells her own story of loss, but comes to the conclusion that if not for his persistence, Judith would not be alive today. He tells Noah that it's not over yet. Then Noah gets up and sees his old house from afar. He runs towards him, and Iris chases after him. Upon entering the house, they find Noah's mother dead in the living room, her head smashed by some blunt object. Bud also falls on her side and asks for forgiveness. From Iris goes in search of the sound he heard from the bedroom. In the bedroom, he is distracted by the photos of Noah's brothers on the wall and is suddenly bitten by a walker. But he also rushes into the room and kills the walker, after which he convulsively tells Tyrese that he will go after the others. Tyrese starts hallucinating. He sees Martin from Terminus, who taunts him that he is dying and that he didn't kill him when he had the chance in the hut. He says that if he did, Bob might be alive today, Beth might be alive. Bob then appears and reminds Tyrese that he was bitten at the food bank. A voice is heard on the radio announcing terrible news. The governor appears and reminds Tyrese how he said he would do everything he could to make a living when he first arrived in Woodbury. Then Mika and Lisa appear to console Tyrese, but the governor refutes their words. Tyrese emerges from a hallucination when the figure he saw as the governor turns into a walker who starts attacking him. Tyrese quickly puts him down, but he manages to bite his hand and falls to the floor. In the backyard of the community, near a destroyed wall surrounded by severed legs and arms, Michonne expresses her idea to stay in a neighboring settlement, but Rick is against it. She argues that they should go to Washington, D.C., where they might have a chance. After a while, Rick agrees. At this moment, a cry for help is heard, and the group runs to save him from several walkers who cornered him. He reports that Tyrese has been bitten, and they set off in the direction of his house. Beth appears in the house as part of Tyrese's hallucination, playing guitar and singing, while Mika and Lizzie sit in front of her. Beth tells Tyrese that everything is fine and that he needs to know it now. The governor scolds him for letting Carol live after what she did to the woman he loved. He points at the governor and declares that he is dead, that everything in him is dead, and that he has forgiven Carol because this is not the end. Micah and Lizzie take Tyrese's hand before it turns out that it's Rick holding his bloody hand so that Michonne amputates it to stop the spread of infection. The group drags Tyrese out of the house to the front gate. They break the locks and open the doors. Walkers rush in. They quickly deal with them and carry Tyrese all the way to the car. As they run, Tyrese has flashbacks of the horrors he saw. Sasha kills Martin, and Carol shoots Lisa. Tyrese weakens by the time they get to the car, and Rick radioed Carol that she needs to cauterize her hand to stop the bleeding. After a slight hitch due to the fact that the car got stuck in the mud and then crashed into a covered pickup truck, they manage to hit the road. Tyrese is having another hallucination. Beth drives the car, Bob sits in the passenger seat, and Mika and Lizzie sit next to him and comfort him. Tyrese takes one last look at them all, looks out of the car window and dies peacefully, admiring the sunset. Realizing that he has passed away, they stop and pull him out of the car onto the road, and Michonne lays him on the ground while the others are in confusion. Gabriel reads lines from the Bible, and the others stand over the place of his burial. Daryl looks extremely saddened, and Sasha is visually shocked by the death of his brother, and Rick, furious that he has lost another friend, the very man who saved his daughter. Maggie is sitting in the woods crying, obviously because of Beth. The walker slowly makes his way to her through the bushes and comes dangerously close, but gets stuck between two trees. Maggie quickly deals with him with her knife. Meanwhile, Daryl digs up a worm and eats it, implying that the group is on their way without supplies. Sasha walks along a dried-up stream in search of water. She notices a few dead frogs, which indicates that there is not enough water. The three of them return to the others who are waiting on the road. Maggie notes that it is unlikely that the rest of the band members were more lucky. They have gone a day and a half without food and water, and the whole group is weak and exhausted. How long do we have left? Maggie asks out loud. 60 miles, Sasha answers stupidly, referring to the distance to Washington. That's not what I was talking about, Maggie says grimly. After driving a little more, the group's car runs out of fuel. They leave her on the road and continue on foot. Eventually they overtake a small pack of walkers who follow them from a distance. Rick tells Daryl that he thinks they should try to find a position on high ground before dealing with the walkers. Carl gives Maggie a music box as a reminder of Beth. Gabriel's father offers Maggie his consolations, but she rejects them and says that he did not know Herschel or Beth, so he cannot understand her pain. She then reminds Gabriel of his own sins, especially when he saved himself at the expense of his parishioners. The group continues to move along the road, hungry and dehydrated. Sasha, still angry at the loss of his brother Tyrese, wants to fight the walkers. Michonne disagrees, warning Sasha that she shouldn't let her anger get the better of her, as Tyrese did after Karen's death. Sasha angrily objects that she and Tyrese are not alike. Daryl and Carol separate from the group in search of food and water. Carol says that Beth saved her life in Atlanta, as well as Daryl's life, and gives Daryl Beth's knife. Eventually, they reach an overpass with a steep ravine on either side. Rick, along with Glenn, Maggie, Michonne, Sasha and Abraham, tries to destroy a group of walkers by luring them on both sides of the road, and then pushing them into a ravine. However, Sasha starts stabbing walkers with his knife, which forces the group to do the same. During the fight, Sasha becomes so purposeful that she almost injures Michonne and accidentally cuts Abraham's hand. Ricky is almost bitten by a walker, but Daryl returns and saves him. After the walkers are dead, Michonne makes a remark to Sasha, who in response looks at her with an angry challenge. The group goes on to find some abandoned cars. Maggie finds a bound and gagged female walker in the trunk, who painfully reminds her of Beth, after which Glenn kills her. Daryl continues to walk through the woods in search of provisions. He encounters the remains of a deer, decomposing and half-eaten, presumably by a walker. He also notices the corpse of a man nearby, who seems to have committed suicide. Daryl wonders if he should take the deer, but decides to leave and return to the others. The group is resting on the side of the road. Abraham starts drinking alcohol from a bottle, and the others look at it. Tara points out to Rosita that he is only making the situation worse. Rosita says Abraham knows about it. Eugene says that Abraham knows what he's doing and the situation can't be worse than it is now, but Rosita disagrees. Their conversation is interrupted when a group of wild dogs appears from the forest. They see the group and start growling and barking threateningly. The whole group is tense in anticipation of a fight, but Sasha quickly deals with the dogs with a rifle. Everyone is sitting motionless, clearly surprised by her actions. Rick calmly stands up and takes a branch. Breaking it into 2 parts, he strands pieces of dog meat on a skewer and cooks them over an open fire. But he also refuses to eat the meat of hounds, looking at the collar of one of the dogs with visible stupefaction. Sasha approaches him, and he tells her that Tyrese tried to help him and that he is not sure he can handle it. "So you can't do it," Sasha says sternly. "Don't think, just eat," she adds before leaving. Meanwhile, Gabriel takes off his clerical collar and throws it into the fire. The group keeps going. During the walk, Glenn offers Maggie a drink of water, but she refuses. Then Glenn asks her to just talk to him. Maggie explains that after Herschel's death, she didn't really hope that Beth was alive, but after she learned from Michonne that she was alive, she regained hope. However, after she finds out that Beth was killed on the same day, she doesn't know if she wants to keep fighting to survive. Glenn assures her that she can, because she's a fighter. Glenn offers her a drink again, and she accepts it. Meanwhile, Sasha passes by Abraham, who is still drinking his liquor. He offers Sasha to share a drink with him, but she refuses, saying that he only makes the situation worse. After Maggie drinks her portion of water, Glenn offers the bottle to Daryl, who refuses. Daryl separates from the group, goes into the forest and sits down under a tree. A small shed can be seen in the distance. Daryl smokes a cigarette, lost in dreams. He deliberately burns his hand with a cigarette, but does not show pain, and eventually breaks down in tears. The group finds a stack of bottled water in the middle of the road. Daryl joins them, and Rick shows him a note with an inscription from a friend. The whole group fears it could be a trap. Eugene disagrees and says that, in his opinion, it really is from a friend. He grabs one of the bottles and is about to drink it when Abraham pushes him away. Soon after, it starts raining from the sky. The whole group rejoices, except for Daryl, Maggie and Sasha, who are still devastated by the death of their loved ones and emotionally numb, and Gabriel, who asks God for forgiveness for doubting him. The jubilant celebration is interrupted when the group sees a strong thunderstorm rapidly approaching. Daryl tells the others that he has found a shed nearby and leads them to the shed to take shelter. When they clean out the barn, Maggie finds a walker who was the girl who died. After Maggie stabs the walker, Carol joins her, and Maggie notices that the girl had a gun and says she could have just shot herself. Carol tells Maggie that some people can't give up like them. Night falls and the group rests in the barn while a storm rages outside. Maggie is lying by the fire, Sasha is sitting with Abraham looking after her with liquor in hand, and Rick is telling the group a story from his childhood about his grandfather who fought in World War II. Rick often asked him if he had ever killed Germans during the war, but he did not answer. And when he asked him if the Germans had tried to kill him, Grandpa fell silent. Rick's grandfather told him that he had been dead since the moment he entered enemy territory, and that every day when he woke up, he always told himself, "Rest in peace, and now get up and go to war." And then, after several years of pretending to be dead, he managed to get out alive. "I think that's the trick," concludes Rick. "We tell ourselves that we are the Walking Dead." Daryl disagrees, saying, "We are not them." The face tries to assure him that this is really not the case. Rising to his feet, Daryl repeats "We are not them" and walks away from the fire. Some time later, when Daryl is standing at the entrance to the barn, he hears a noise outside. He looks out and sees a herd of walkers approaching the barn in the rain. Daryl instinctively blocks the door. Maggie notices, understands what is happening, and helps him. The walkers start trying to push the door out. Rick and the others realize what's going on, and everyone rushes to help Daryl and Maggie. While the herd continues to press on the group itself continues to fight for its own survival. Carl puts Judith crying on the ground and helps. While the storm is raging outside, the groups and the herd are fighting each other through the barn door. Everyone is doing everything possible not to let the herd inside. The next morning, everything is calm, and Maggie wakes up and sees that Daryl is still awake. She sits down next to him and talks to him, telling him that he needs to get some sleep and that he can rest now. They look at Sasha, who is sleeping against the far wall. He was cool, Daryl remarks, referring to Ayers. Maggie agrees. So is she, Daryl adds, talking about it. She didn't know it, but she was like that. Daryl hands Maggie the music box that Carl gave her, saying that he fixed it. Then she will be Sasha, and they leave the hut. They discover that because of the strength of the hurricane, all the walkers were either killed or immobilized, crushed by trees or impaled on them. The scale of the destruction is such that Sasha is surprised that the shed was not destroyed either. Then Maggie and Sasha sit on a fallen tree and watch the sunrise together. As they sit, Sasha tells Maggie about what Noah said about himself, that he doesn't know if he can survive. Sasha admits that she feels the same way, but Maggie assures her that she will survive. Maggie tries to play the music box, but discovers that the box is still broken. The women laugh at this, but their conversation is interrupted by a man named Aaron, who asks them if he can talk to the main one, and calls Rick's name. The women, confused, pull out their guns and ask how he knows about Rick.